Good afternoon, everybody. It is April 16th, 2020, and I got a question for you. Do you think the real estate crisis is fake? And I got a couple questions because, as one of the top REO asset managers that's real estate owned for one of the largest banks during the last mortgage crisis, I was in charge of getting rid of foreclosures. And they were numerous in every single neighborhood practically, coast to coast. People couldn't borrow, values were down, and it was just like a domino effect. One thing led to the other, largely caused by the banks themselves. They overlent to people that weren't qualified, bought multiple homes with high debt ratios and low reserves. Now we're in this pandemic, and there should be some great buying opportunities, right? Well, I've gotten a couple calls from the, you know, banks, lenders, mortgage servicing companies, they call me. And there's some things I see that's little offsetting from one another. Prior to the pandemic, interest rates were at an all-time low. They couldn't keep up with the applications for mortgages, so they increased the rates. Just because applications were so plentiful, they couldn't get the properties appraised in as quick as normally. They couldn't process the applications as fast as normally. They couldn't get the title companies or attorneys to close them as fast as normally because there were just so many applications. So even though the rate was low, they had to increase it just to back off on the applications. Then the pandemic set in. And with that, people lost their jobs, so unemployment spiked unseen of. It was record lows and then it goes to record highs within 6 weeks. So the banks tighten up their lending practices, like greater down payments and more stringent employment verification closer to the closing date, and higher credit score requirements. And a lot of people on the internet, they've been uh, quoting J.P. Morgan Chase. But remember, the mortgage business is competitive. There's a lot better deals out there than J.P. Morgan Chase, and you can go on and apply online and get lots of different lenders to call you. So just because J.P. Morgan Chase makes it more difficult, don't think everybody's making it more difficult. But we got to look at it in the grand scheme of things. I've gotten several phone calls this week that were the result of the pandemic on real estate. And one of those calls was from a lender. You know, they are involved in a loan for the construction and the final closeout loan for a hotel, a typical four-story franchise hotel. And this was on an interstate just off the exit, but there's nothing there on that exit other than a couple fast food places, some fuel places, gas places. And as you typically see, one or two of these four-story hotels, the ones that are usually between 120 and 200 rooms. So it was under construction during the crisis came, and even completed hotels and on a good exit only have an occupancy rate of probably in the 20% top right now. This one's shelled out, roof is on, no, electrical started on the inside and stuff like that, plumbing rough. But the exterior, there's no sheathing on the sides, there's no windows in it. And they're talking to the owner that's building this, he's got the loan. What are we going to do? The guy that's building it saying, gee, if this changes everything, I'm on a second or third rate exit. Occupancies now are in the 20 percentiles for a better exit. The numbers just aren't going to work if I finish this out. And the bank is like, okay, we're in this. What should we do? And there's many options here. One of them would be just okay. They're negotiating back and forth. It's not just that one of them's not forcing the issue on the other. Right now, they're just looking, brainstorming, and things are changing daily. And 3 weeks from now, there could be a vaccine and everything's back to normal. But as of today, what do they want to do? Because even if this project is built out, developed, the numbers aren't going to work under current circumstances. It's 4 stories with a roof on. You can't just walk away right now. And that's one of the questions was, do we just stop right now, put a fence around it? Well, you can't do that. Do we finish it out? Well, under today's circumstances, that's going to not make sense because the owner, even if he built it out, couldn't get enough rooms filled under current circumstances to pay the mortgage. So my recommendation was shell it out, meaning sheathe it, suspend interior work, and you're going to have to take a pause. Things are going to get better, but you just don't know what time frame. You can't, for security reasons, you can't just fence it. It will be stripped out, and vandalized in a dangerous situation because you have open sidewalls. But don't put windows in it, just only on the top floor, because otherwise people, put stones through them. So just sheathe it out, maybe, and for ventilation stuff, put the top floor windows in. So that's the possibility there. So there's been some influence on the real estate market. But I see the economy, people are busting at the seams to want to get back into business, back into employment. And the economy was so strong to begin with. And the government is throwing so much money into the system that we might be coming out of this with a stronger economy than we had before, to just be through the pent up demand and the money being shot into the system. Yes, there's going to be winners and losers. Definitely, you can't go back to all the hotels and motels on the beaches of Florida and regain the losses from those closures from the spring. And New York City is going to have a longer term impact. But most of the country, I don't see as you're going to be able to find the deals that I was thinking you might have been able to find 2 weeks ago. People are having a different mental image of they're depressed because they have not been able to get their paychecks, but they're ready to get back. They want the economy like it was before. The other thing was one of the major mortgage servicers called me, and because I'm an expert in valuation and foreclosures, and their thing is, well, what can we do to contract you up for the coming crisis? And I think it's a little premature. I just don't see the volume anything like 2008 at all. I mean, there's going to be people that walk away from properties, but even when the economy was good last year in 2019 and before the pandemic, there was always foreclosure activity. There's always foreclosure activity. Yes, sometimes it's increases and no, but there was always foreclosure, and it comes for different reasons. Bad deal to be in with, divorce, medical crisis, bad financial planning. So there's always, even in commercial property, businesses go in and out of business, and but they've been so, excuse me, rare lately that it hasn't been a big impact. So now I'm thinking, is there going to be a real estate crisis? There's not going to be one coast to coast. There's going to be areas, yes, when like municipalities or governments stop like the rental forbearance. Well, if you can't pay your landlord, especially in large apartment complexes, there's got to be a mechanism that it goes up to. He doesn't have to pay. And there's got to be where you just can't have the tenants not pay and the landlord not be liable. So there's going to be a lot of programs. And listen, Trump's a real estate guy. He's been in default. He knows how to make programs that work. But I don't see where there's going to be a large scale coast to coast real estate crisis. It might be the other way. Interest rates might get so low that it influences the value of properties. And then with the pent-up demand, that it strengthens the market. We're in a pause period. I wouldn't say it's a crisis period. I think it's a pause period. But keep them up. Anything could change with the vaccine tomorrow, or this thing could boomerang around and come back again. It could mutate. So, but I don't think if you're expecting a grand default in the marketplace like you did in 2008, 2009, the only reason I think that would happen is the banks got their money from the government, but then they didn't enable programs for the borrowers for the properties.